If you want love, this video will help you get more of it. Let's go. I remember 14 years ago, I was in London, living in London, working in London, and I went to see a seminar with John Gray. He, as you may know, is the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And he's the one that put into my reality this idea of love buckets. And it's a super powerful idea. It's the sense that there are multiple places in our lives that we can derive love from. And typically, what trips us up is we get overly fixated on one love bucket, and typically that's the partner love bucket, and it stops us from seeing all these other places that we can receive and give love in our lives. So I'm going to take you through just a few potential love buckets that could exist in your life. And by the way, this is true whether you are in a romantic relationship or not. Right? So if you're not in a romantic relationship, you might be overly fixated on, I need to get in a romantic relationship in order to feel loved. If you are in a romantic relationship, sometimes the danger is that you put so much attention on that relationship that you forget to fill these other buckets, and you may feel resentful that your partner's not giving you enough love, or you're not being loved in the way that you want. So whether either of those things is true, this video will help you, and stay to the end because I've got some good stuff to share. So the first bucket that you can fill up in order to experience more love is the self-love bucket. Now, caveat, this is sometimes the hardest bucket, right? Very few of us were raised in a culture and context that taught us how to love ourselves deeply, how to deeply accept who we are and who we're becoming, right? If the language of self-love is a little like, oh, that's a bit woo for me, just talk about self-acceptance, right? Because self-love and deep self-acceptance are essentially the same thing, right? How can you love and accept yourself more deeply? For most of us, there's a structure in our heads, the inner critic, that is running riot, right? For most of us, it runs unchecked most days of every week of every year, telling us ways that we're bad, things that we did wrong, things that we fall short, ways that we're not good enough, ways that we didn't try hard enough, ways that we're not bright enough, beautiful enough, strong enough, you fill in the blank enough, right? The basic thing that the inner critic structure knows how to do is to keep you safe. That was what it was designed for, and it's probably done that to some extent because you're here and watching this video, and most of you have reached adulthood. Congratulations. But what gets you here doesn't get you there, right? Meaning what has you safe doesn't always have you feel loved. And the game of love is actually a process of relaxing, turning down the volume on that inner critic. And if you want more on the inner critic, look beneath this video, I'll link you to another video that can take you into more detail about that. So how do we fill up this self-love bucket is often it's actually the question of how do we relax what gets in the way to love, right? We could call those blocks or barriers to self-love. The biggest one is the inner critic, right? Is that voice that you haven't yet distinguished, which is talking to you all the time and giving you a continual commentary on your life. By the way, sometimes that commentary can be good, right? Sometimes it can be ego inflating. Look at me, I'm so good, I'm so intelligent, I did that better than that person, I can't believe how that person shops, eats, dresses, goes about their work. But those two things, they keep each other in place, right? Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, right? The idea here is not to just be up all the time. It's not to be one up on everyone. It's not to be in judgment of other people and, sort of overly self-indulgent on ourselves. It's actually to have a more non-judgmental view of reality, including ourselves and other people. Right? That's how you fill up the self-love bucket, is to actually look at the places where you typically have judgments on yourself and other people and learn how to relax them. The benefit is you feel more self-love. The other benefit is you tend to be more loving of other people, right? Which, again, to this video, I want more love in my life. The more you can love on other people, right? The more you can reduce the barriers, the friction to experiencing love, appreciation, and gratitude for other people, the more love that you're going to have in your life anyway. If you did nothing about changing the external circumstances of your life, but just got better at removing blocks to loving other people, and if you can't do that, just owning the places, look, I have a judgment on this person, right? I have a judgment on this way of being. That's often the beginning of wakefulness. It doesn't mean we have to immediately be non-judgmental, loving, and accepting of everything that everyone ever does, right? Sometimes people do stupid things. Sometimes I do stupid things. Sometimes people are narrow-minded, obnoxious, self-serving, ruthless, ambitious, all the things that human beings can be. But you can be in discernment rather than judgment, right? Discernment is, yeah, I see it and I don't like the behavior, but I can still have an orientation of love towards the person, right? Judgment is, you shouldn't do that, and then ... you're a bad person or you're a lesser person. When we're in that orientation, we tend to give less love, right? And therefore we tend to receive less love. One way of talking about the feminine essence or part of us, right, which we all have, is that the main animating dynamic of the feminine is the giving and receiving of love, right? And having now, had the opportunity and privilege really to work with a lot of women over a lot of years, what I see typically is that it's actually the giving that's easier, and it's the receiving that's harder. So if there's one place that you want to go to work in order to have more love in your life, it's actually to let it in more, right? It's actually to allow yourself to receive more, to slow down, not fill in the vacuum when things aren't getting done, to appreciate it when someone says, hey, I can help you with that, to take them up on the offer, to not have to have the solution to all your problems, to actually slow down and let things unfold more in front of you, right? To trust at a deeper level that things can come to you and manifest in your life, right? It's not only good and easy things, right? Life will also bring you tough, challenging, and difficult things. But there's an orientation there that says, hey, my receiving is important. I am worthy of receiving. A lot of us are unconsciously identified with the persona of the giver, right? And oftentimes that will have been reflected back to us in childhood and culture. People like it when we give to them, right? So sometimes we have a unconscious strategy called if I give enough love, people will love me, right? And that's a partial truth, right? If you're a nurse, a mother, a teacher, so many roles in society, you're administering love and care to people. Sometimes you might feel undervalued, right? And that's another issue. And I think we would all do well to value the nurses, mothers, and teachers in our lives more. However, you may also get a lot of positive feedback for that, right? You're running around pulling a 90-hour week, making sure that everyone else is okay, and who's missing there? It's you, right? And what's really missing, if we drill down more deeply, is you actually being able to receive in your life, right? If you give, it's almost like you're pushing energy out all the time. When you're pushing energy out all the time, what are you not doing? You're not receiving, right? So, sometimes I'm a pretty simple guy. If you just reduce everything, it's like, there's a dynamic of giving and receiving. Most of us tend to be better at one of those dynamics than the other. Which one is harder for you? And that's where you want to go to work, right? You want more love in your life. And let's say you're constantly receiving, right? You're constantly, in your queen energy, letting people do things for you, but you never actually show up to serve the realm, which is the other side of the sort of the queen contract, if you will. Then we actually need you to open your heart more and serve and, find your purpose and your duty and give more to other people, right? If you're constantly hoarding the cookies, you might need to learn how, even when it feels difficult, to say, hey, I'm going to split this with you, or hey, I'm going to pay for this, or hey, I'm going to give this to you, right? That would be the opposite kind of energy. If we tend to hoard and be greedy, the deadly sin would be avarice, right? If we're in that, then actually it's learning how to give more. But for most of you, I think the challenge is actually going to be receiving. And that will actually, if you're a woman watching this right now, or someone who has a predominantly feminine essence, what will bring you more into your feminine is actually that allowing you to receive more. Like, you will actually feel more fulfilled and have a different and probably more enjoyable experience of life. You might also, here's the kicker, in the other bucket that we can call, romantic love or partner love, you might actually receive more. Both you might even receive in the form of, more dates, better dates, maybe even a relationship. Or if you're in a relationship, you might find, hey, I like how this, let's say you're mostly on the channel, maybe women that date men. I like how this person's showing up for me, right? I'm actually receiving more from them. I'm actually taking more in. I'm feeling more loved in their presence because I'm open to receiving more love. Right, so we've got self-love, we've got partner love, but there are other buckets. So let's go into it. Another bucket is dependent love, right? Loving things that are actually dependent on us, right? And this, I sometimes call this plant and up, right? So, mostly at the moment I'm doing a good job of keeping some plants alive. But, plants, pets, children, obviously a completely different level of investment. But things that really are dependent upon us for the survival, and that our love is part of their thriving, and that's another place if you want to experience more love. Now, I'm not saying you're feeling unloved, go solve that by having a dog or having a child. What I am saying is just notice where that bucket is in your life, and is it something that you want to invest more in, or is it something that that dynamic of giving and receiving is happening? Maybe you are a parent, but it's so give all the time. Maybe we need to address that a little bit. Maybe you need to receive more. Maybe there needs to be more, Mother's Days, so to speak, in your life. Or maybe there needs to be a day a month where, you're off and you're not doing that. Or maybe someone else needs to actually clean the house. Or maybe you need to get a cleaner so that you can sit back a little bit, Or maybe you need to address the contract in a sense that you have with your teenager, right? Who's constantly doing their thing and kind of oblivious to what makes the household run, right? I've worked with a number of people in this territory where they're exhausted and they don't feel like they ever have anyone look out for them. But in a sense, they never really create the space for that, or they never actually give the feedback about how that would be important to them. So what's going on in independent love? Maybe you don't want to have children. Maybe you're in a stage in life where you wouldn't have children. Maybe you don't even want to have a pet. Maybe you want to, travel. That's not part of it. Maybe there's just something that you can tend. Maybe you can tend to your garden. Maybe you can tend to plants. Maybe you can take care of, someone's children when they're out of town. Or, maybe you can dog sit. Or maybe you can go on the Rover app and walk dogs. Or you fill in the blanks. But there's something about that kind of love, which is another bucket that most of us want to pay some kind of attention to. Another bucket that you might want to look into is what John Gray calls community love, right? So this is how much love am I receiving from my wider social context and group? What am I a part of? Am I a part of a community, right? A lot of us in this time have a challenge in this area because, bluntly, we don't really feel part of something bigger, right? Perhaps a lot of our relationships are not, co-located, right? They're actually, across the country, across the world. Perhaps a lot of them are running on, WhatsApp and Zoom calls. Perhaps some of our friendships or relationships were diminished through COVID, right? Either through actual loss of people or loss of capacity, or just the fact that, we were all locked down and weren't able to get out, and perhaps that still hasn't returned, and maybe it'll never return to exactly how it was before. Maybe you're not part of a group in your community that matters to you, right? Maybe you're not part of a, church or, coaching Little League, or being part of a sports team, or singing in the choir, or taking some kind of leadership role civically or politically, being part of the PTA, running a lemonade stand. Maybe there's not something there that currently is really filling that bucket up for you, but maybe there are opportunities. Maybe there's something that you can volunteer for. Maybe you can volunteer to lead a local bike ride because that's something that you know how to do, right? Maybe you don't want to have children, but you like children and want to look out for them, and you can become a court-appointed special advocate who advocates for a young person that doesn't have one or two people in parental or guardian roles in their life. Maybe you just love getting out in nature and you can be part of some kind of nature conservancy, right? There are so many opportunities for this when you actually go looking for it. The question is, how does that sit in your life? And if you're not feeling the love in that way, right, the love of both giving and receiving from the community, this might be an area for you to step up in. Oftentimes, what blocks people giving and receiving in this territory is that there's other things that have their attention, right? Before they think about the we, the group, the community, which in Enneagram speak we would call the social instinct, they're pretty locked up in their self-preservation instinct, which means, they're doing the laundry, paying the bills, paying the taxes, mowing the lawn, cleaning the bathroom, cooking dinner, washing up, all things that are part of life and that we may have to attend to, but that always gets priority, right? And they don't feel a lot of love with that. That's kind of like, their instinct is taking care of it, right? They're important maintenance functions of life, but it's not things that when they look back on their life, they're going to say, hey, I'm so grateful, how I washed up so punctually. Maybe they're going to miss some of the things that are actually more meaningful to them, right? And perhaps if you don't have some kind of bigger context in the community, this is actually going to give you a disproportionate feeling of love, right? This is the irony, and we could get into it more when we, talking about the instincts here. But the instinct that you least attend to is sometimes the one that surprises you that it gives you more back, right? The instinct that you tend to attend to, right? In this instance, I'm saying maintaining home, resource management, money, etc. It doesn't actually give you as much as the level of attention would suggest it would. It's what's got your attention, but it's not necessarily what's impacting your heart. So that's something that you can think about. We can talk about universal love, right? Which is be something like, it could be love of God if you have that context. It could be, it could be love of all humanity. It could be, a sense that you're receiving love from the universe, right? Or that there is some kind of love that is somewhere underpinning at least all or some of this reality. Maybe you can get more in connection with that. That's a kind of form of like religious or spiritual or devotional love. And maybe those words don't mean anything to you. Maybe there's just a curiosity. Or maybe when I feel more connected to all that is, however that happens for me, whether it's through, coming together with people in some kind of prayer, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through getting out into big nature, whether it's through just getting quiet with myself, whether it's through reading texts, whether it's through contemplating all that is. However you do or don't have that connection is going to impact the level of love that you feel, right? That's a sort of a love for the world, right? As limited and as frustrating and as sometimes confusing and violent as the world is, we are part of this thing, which is living and breathing and unfolding and in many ways evolving, changing. And it can be good for us to feel our place in the wholeness that is, right? That we're not just, life isn't just, as they used to say, maybe they do still say this in Paris, right? Metro, boulot, dodo, right? Commute, work, sleep. That you're not just stuck in the sort of the rhythm of the day to day and the maintaining your life. That sometimes, even if it's just a few times a year, you step out of that stream and you step into a bigger stream of consciousness, a bigger stream of what might be possible. Any of these buckets that's deficient can't easily just be filled by the next bucket, right? So it's not like you can load up 10 out of 10 on community love and then, dependent love, partner love, universal love. These things don't matter. It's almost like they are additional, right? They sit alongside each other. We need a minimum effective dose in each of these. It's not like you need to be 10 out of 10 in these all the time in order to be fulfilled. No, it's more of a dynamic noticing, like, yeah, I haven't really tapped in spiritually recently. Let me do that. Or, gosh, I don't really feel connected to my community. Don't even know how to do that. Let me start thinking about it. I am in a relationship, but I haven't been attending to it. I've been so busy at work. Or I'm not in a relationship, but I've been so busy with this, I'm not even thinking about dating. Or the notion of self-love. I mean, I remember when I first used to hear, I first used to live in Boulder, Colorado, people talk about self-love. It's self-love. Everything. Self-love seemed to be this sort of magical potion, right? The sort of cure-all for everything. I don't think self-love is the cure-all for everything, but I do think the more that you experience self-love, the more it puts you in balance to experience some of these other forms of love. And these other forms of love can't be an ongoing substitute for a lack of self-love, right? So you can't, only from partner love fulfill a problem that sits in this bucket of self-love, right? There's got to be some minimum amount of investment in each of these buckets, or at least that's the opportunity ahead of us. So as we wrap this up, which bucket needs more attention from you, right? Which buckets typically already get your attention, so you actually don't need to be so hawkish about them, right? Where could you actually deprioritize attention because you know how to get that bucket filled? Where do you need a new strategy, right? Maybe there was a bucket that used to get filled because, you ran the local youth club, but now it got shut in COVID, and now actually that part of your life is kind of shut down, right? Where do you need to reimagine and actually go into an initiation phase? When it comes to the dynamic of giving and receiving, do you tend to give more easily or do you tend to receive more easily? And how can you start thinking about bringing more of that energy that you don't experience into your life? I want to know how you get on with these. Please like this video, leave me a comment. I want to know what's your experience in these different buckets. How's it going for you? And if you like what's in this video and you want to know more about self-love, go watch this video that I've put here, How to Love and Accept Yourself. I think it's one of the best videos I ever made. I got a lot of great feedback on it. I want you to watch it if you haven't watched it. So go click on that. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.